The laughter still echoed in Beverly Hull's ears as they shoved the deed into her trembling hands. "A cave for the cursed Omega, enjoy your inheritance," they sneered. Everyone knew Death's Hollow claimed its owners within 3 days. 12 bodies, 12 failures. But as Beverly stood before the cave's entrance that night, watching ancient chains snap on their own, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A voice from the darkness, ancient and hungry. "Finally, I've been waiting for you, daughter of ruin." She had 72 hours to survive what killed everyone else. But what Beverly didn't know was that surviving the cave was only the beginning, because what awakened inside would change everything and everyone forever. Chapter 1: The Inheritance Trap. The pack hall reeked of triumph and cruelty. Beverly stood in the center of the circle, her wrists still burning from where they'd carved away her pack markings. The ceremony had been brutal public humiliation designed to break her spirit before casting her out. But it was the laughter that cut deepest. "Congratulations, Omega." Pack leader Wayne Norris held up the blood-stained deed like a trophy, his smile sharp as broken glass. "You've inherited property. How generous are we." "Tack." More laughter rippled through the gathered wolves. Beverly's former packmates, people she'd grown up with, trained beside, trusted, watched with expressions ranging from pity to satisfied malice. Not one stepped forward to defend her. Wayne's voice dripped false kindness. "Death's Hollow, a cave all your own. Stake your claim within 72 hours, and it's yours forever." His eyes glinted. "Of course, the previous 12 owners didn't quite make it that long, but I'm sure you'll be different." He thrust the deed at her. Beverly took it with shaking hands, the parchment heavy with more than just ink. She could feel the weight of old blood soaked into the fibers, could smell death clinging to the edges. The deed listed 12 names, each one crossed out in red. "This is murder," she whispered. "This is justice." Wayne stepped closer, his alpha presence crushing down on her Omega instincts like a physical weight. "You were caught with stolen pack funds. The evidence was clear. I was framed." Beverly's voice cracked but held firm. "I never touched that money." "Then prove it from your new home." Wayne's smile widened. "You have 3 days. Survive them, and maybe we'll reconsider your guilt. Fail, and well, at least you'll have company." The cave seems to enjoy collecting bodies. Beverly's mind raced. She knew the truth had seen Maria Garner slip the envelope into her belongings, had watched her former friend testify with false tears about Beverly's supposed theft. But no one would believe an Omega over a Beta. No one ever did. The pack physician stepped forward with the traditional banishment items: a small bag of basic supplies, a canteen of water, and a crude map showing the cave's location. The map was marked with skulls. 12 of them. "Any last words?" Wayne asked, performing for the crowd. Beverly looked around the hall one final time. These people had been her family for 18 years. She'd grown up in the pack orphanage after her mother died in childbirth, another Omega lost to complications no one wanted to prevent. She'd learned to be invisible, to survive on the margins, to never expect more than scraps of belonging. And still, somewhere in her foolish heart, she'd believed that being good, being useful, being quiet, would eventually earn her a place. She'd been wrong. "I hope," Beverly said clearly, meeting Wayne's eyes without flinching, "that when the truth comes out, you choke on it." Wayne's hand cracked across her face. The blow sent her stumbling, copper flooding her mouth. The crowd's energy shifted, excited now, bloodthirsty. This was entertainment. "Get out." Wayne's voice had gone cold. "Before I decide 72 hours is too generous." Beverly gathered her meager supplies and walked toward the hall's massive doors. Each step felt like wading through deep water, her body heavy with shock and pain. Behind her, the whispers started. "Poor thing won't last the night. The cave takes them fast, probably a mercy." At least we won't have to feed her anymore. The doors slammed behind her with such force that Beverly felt it reverberate through her bones. The sound of Wayne's final words still echoed, "Don't come back." She walked for 3 days straight. The journey to Death's Hollow took her through forests that grew progressively darker, more twisted. Animals watched her pass with wary eyes, as if they knew where she was headed and pitied her for it. By the third night, her feet were bleeding through her worn shoes, her water was gone, and every muscle screamed for rest. But when she finally saw the cave, all exhaustion vanished, replaced by pure terror. The entrance yawned before her like a mouth full of broken teeth. Chains crisscrossed the opening, thick iron links covered in symbols she didn't recognize, but instinctively feared. The rock around the entrance was wrong somehow, darker than natural stone, almost pulsing with a rhythm that matched no heartbeat she'd ever heard. Beverly checked the map one final time. This was it, her inheritance, her tomb. She approached on shaking legs. The chains began to rattle. Chapter 2: The Awakening Contract. The chains snapped with a sound like breaking bones. Beverly stumbled backward as thick iron links fell away from the cave entrance, clattering against stone with echoes that seemed to go on forever. The symbols etched into the metal glowed briefly, a sickly green that made her stomach turn before fading to dull rust. No wind moved them, no hand touched them. They simply released. "Hello?" Her voice sounded small and foolish even to her own ears. The darkness beyond the entrance shifted, not like shadows moving with light, but like something alive turning its attention toward her. Beverly felt the weight of that gaze, heavy and ancient and hungry. Finally, the voice didn't come from outside her. It resonated inside her skull, behind her eyes, in the hollow of her chest where her heart hammered frantically. "I've been waiting for you, daughter of ruin." I don't know what you mean." Beverly's fingers clutched the deed so hard the parchment crumpled. I was banished. This is just a cave." Laughter rolled through her mind like thunder. "Just a cave? Oh, child. This is a prison, a tomb, a sanctuary. And you are the key I've been waiting 500 years to find." Beverly should run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee back through the forest, to take her chances as a rogue wolf, to choose any fate but this. But she had nowhere to go. No pack would take in a banished Omega accused of theft. Rogues didn't survive long alone, especially not ones as weak as her. And beneath the terror, something else stirred. Curiosity. The same reckless curiosity that had made her read forbidden histories in the pack library, that had driven her to ask questions no Omega should ask. "What are you?" she whispered. "Come inside. I'll show you everything." Beverly took one step forward, then another. The temperature dropped so suddenly, her breath became visible, curling into the shadowed air like ghostly fingers beckoning her deeper. Her worn shoes crossed the threshold, and the moment she entered fully, she felt it a barrier passing over her skin, like walking through a waterfall of ice. The cave stretched before her, wider than seemed possible from outside. The walls weren't rough, natural stone. They were smooth in places, deliberately carved, and covering every surface were symbols, thousands of them, spiraling across the rock in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Beautiful, aren't they? Your ancestors carved them. Blood and magic and desperation, all mixed together. My ancestors? Beverly moved closer to the nearest wall. Beneath layers of dust and something that looked disturbingly like dried blood, she could make out shapes, spirals, crescents, and everywhere, repeated obsessively, a symbol that looked like 3 moons overlapping. The first bloodline. The original queens who ruled these lands before the current packs ripped power from their dying hands. The voice purred with satisfaction. "Your mother never told you?" "No. I suppose she died before she could." Childbirth is so often fatal for those who carry our power. Beverly's hand trembled as she traced one of the symbols. It was warm beneath her fingers, pulsing with a heartbeat that definitely wasn't hers. You're lying. I'm nobody. An orphan from a pack orphanage. Is that what they told you? The darkness seemed to draw closer, wrapping around her like a cloak. Let me show you the truth. The symbols blazed to life. Light erupted from the walls, not the warm golden glow from the stories she'd read, but something cold and silver white that seemed to leach color from everything it touched. Beverly cried out, trying to shield her eyes, but the visions came anyway. A woman with Beverly's face, wearing a crown of bone and moonlight, standing in this very cave, hands raised as she bound something massive and writhing into the stone. The woman was screaming, blood pouring from her nose and eyes as she chanted in a language Beverly had never heard but somehow understood. I seal you here with my blood, my power, my life. You will not touch this world again until the line returns, until my daughter's daughter's daughter comes to claim what was stolen. The vision shifted. The crowned woman, older now, hollow-eyed and pregnant, running through forests while packs of wolves hunted her, collapsing in an orphanage doorway, pressing a bundle into a stranger's arms before the light left her eyes. Keep her safe, keep her hidden. Tell her nothing until she's old enough to survive the truth. Another shift. A kind-faced woman Beverly recognized her as the orphanage matron who'd raised her receiving a visitor in the dead of night. Money exchanging hands. A whispered promise. Never let them know what she is. The light faded. Beverly found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. That can't be real. Every word, every image. Your mother was the last crowned queen of the first bloodline. She fled here when the packs united to destroy her line. She hid you in plain sight, betting that no one would look for lost royalty among the orphans and outcasts. Beverly's mind reeled. If this was true, and some deep part of her recognized it as true, then everything about her life had been a lie. Not just the recent frame job, but her entire existence. Hidden, protected, kept ignorant of her own heritage. Why? She demanded. Why tell me this now? Because you're here. Because you survived long enough to find this place. Because the voice dropped to a whisper that raised every hair on her body. I need you. The darkness pulled back, and Beverly saw it for the first time. In the deepest part of the cave, chained to an altar of black stone, hung a medallion. It was silver, tarnished with age, and carved with the same 3-moon symbol that covered the walls. But it wasn't the medallion that made her heart stop. It was what writhed beneath it, a mass of shadows that seemed to exist in more dimensions than she could comprehend. Eyes opened and closed in the darkness. Mouths formed and dissolved. And at its center, something almost humanoid reached toward her, with hands made of smoke and starlight. Put on the medallion, the entity whispered. 3 drops of your blood on the silver. That's all I need. And in return, I'll give you everything. Power to crush those who hurt you. Strength to reclaim your throne. The ability to make Wayne Norris and Maria Garner and everyone who laughed as you were cast out. I'll make them pay. Beverly stared at the medallion. She could feel its pull, could sense the power coiled within it like a snake ready to strike. Part of her, the part that still burned from Wayne's slap, that still heard the pack's mocking laughter, wanted to reach for it immediately. But the matron who'd raised her had taught her one lesson above all others. Power always has a price. Make sure you can afford to pay it before you make the deal. What's the price? Beverly asked. The entity smiled with too many mouths. Small favors. Nothing you wouldn't do anyway. When I'm hungry, you feed me. When I need strength, you lend me yours. When I ask you to kill, no. Beverly stepped back. I'm not a murderer. Not yet. The shadows rippled with amusement. But you will be. They always are. In the end, the queens, the heroes, the righteous, give them enough pain, enough reason, enough power, and they all become killers, eventually. Beverly's hands clenched into fists. I need time to think. Of course, you have until someone comes to kill you. The entity's laughter filled the cave, which should be, very soon. As if summoned by the words, Beverly heard them. Footsteps outside, multiple people, moving with the disciplined precision of trained hunters, and voices, one of which made her blood run cold. "Omega!" the shout echoed into the cave. "We know you're in there. Come out and we'll make it quick. Resist and—" A child's scream cut through the night. Beverly ran to the entrance. In the moonlight, she saw them. 5 wolves in hunter formation, weapons drawn, and held at knife point by the leader, a massive alpha with cold, dead eyes, was a small girl Beverly recognized from the pack. Little Emma, barely 6 years old, sobbing in terror. The alpha's voice was professional, almost bored. "You have 60 seconds to surrender, Omega, or the child pays for your crimes." Chapter 3. The Enforcer. Beverly's heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped from the cave entrance. The alpha holding Emma didn't flinch, his knife steady against the child's throat. Moonlight caught his features, sharp jaw, dark hair cropped military short, eyes the color of winter storms. He looked at Beverly with the same detachment someone might show a broken tool. "Clayton Lyons," he said, voice flat. "Enforcer for the Northern Ridge Pack. You're accused of bonding with forbidden magic. My orders are to confirm activation and execute if necessary." Beverly's mind raced. Northern Ridge was Wayne's ally, pack the agreement that kept both territories secure. If they'd sent their enforcer, this wasn't just about her supposed theft anymore. This was about the cave. "I haven't bonded with anything," she said, forcing her voice steady. "I just arrived. Please, let the child go. She's innocent. Innocence is irrelevant." Clayton's grip on Emma never wavered. The little girl whimpered, tears streaming down her face. The cave's seal was broken. Protocol requires confirmation that the magic remains dormant. One of the other hunters, a wiry beta, laughed harshly. "Dormant? Look at it, Clayton. The whole thing's glowing. She's already activated it." Beverly glanced back. He was right, the cave entrance pulsed with that sickly silver-white light. Symbols writhing across the stone like living things. The entity inside was feeding off her fear, growing stronger with every terrified heartbeat. "Put on the medallion," it whispered in her mind. "Save the innocent, punish the guilty. You know you want to." "I can prove it's dormant," Beverly said desperately. "Give me 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds and I'll show you." "You have 5. Clayton's eyes met hers, and for just a moment, Beverly saw something flicker in those storm-gray depths. Not quite regret, but conflict. "If you've bonded with the entity, my orders are clear." The ground trembled. Beverly's fear spiked, and the cave responded, symbols flaring brighter, the air growing thick with power that tasted like copper and moonlight. The hunters stepped back nervously, weapons raised. Only Clayton remained perfectly still, his attention split between Beverly and the cave behind her. "It's responding to her," the beta hunter hissed. "She's already begun the bond." Clayton's jaw tightened. "Omega, last chance. Step away from the cave. If you come peacefully, the child lives." Beverly looked at Emma, 6 years old, terrified, completely innocent of whatever political games the packs were playing. Then at Clayton, who held her with professional efficiency but whose eyes betrayed the cost of following orders he clearly didn't believe in. And finally, back at the cave, where the entity waited with promises of power and revenge. She had seconds to decide. Let them take her, and Emma might live but Beverly would die, and the entity would find another host eventually. Fight back without the medallion's power, and they'd all die. Or 3 drops of blood. That's all. Save her. You know you can't let a child die. Beverly's hand moved before conscious thought caught up. She grabbed a sharp stone from the cave entrance and sliced her palm. 3 drops of blood fell onto the cave floor, and even without the medallion, the entity moved. Darkness erupted from the cave mouth like a living flood. Tendrils of shadow whipped out, wrapping around the hunter's legs, their weapons, pulling them off balance. Clayton jerked back instinctively, his knife moving away from Emma's throat for just a heartbeat. It was enough. Beverly lunged forward, grabbed Emma, and ran. Not deeper into the cave that would trap them, but laterally, into the forest where the trees grew thick enough to provide cover. Behind her, she heard Clayton shouting orders, heard the hunters struggling against the shadows. "I've got the child!" Beverly screamed back. "Call them off! She's safe!" For a long moment, nothing. Then Clayton's voice, tight with something that might have been admiration or might have been anger. "Stand down. Let her go." The shadows retreated slowly, reluctantly, like a predator denied its kill. Beverly didn't wait to see what happened next. She ran deeper into the forest, Emma clutching her neck with desperate strength. "It's okay," Beverly gasped, even though nothing was okay. "I've got you. You're safe." They made it perhaps half a mile before Beverly's legs gave out. She collapsed against a massive oak, chest heaving, Emma still wrapped around her like a barnacle. The little girl was crying quietly now, shock setting in. "Why did they take me?" Emma whispered. "I didn't do anything bad." "I know, sweetheart. I know." Beverly stroked the child's hair with her uninjured hand. The cut on her palm had already stopped bleeding, but the skin around it looked different, darker, like the shadow stuff from the cave had stained her from the inside. Footsteps approached singular, deliberate, unhurried. Beverly tensed, looking for a weapon, but found nothing. She pulled Emma behind her protectively as Clayton emerged from the darkness. He was alone. His weapons were sheathed, and he looked at Beverly with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said quietly. "Let us go." Beverly's voice shook. "Please, she's just a child. I know what she is." Clayton crouched down to their level, slow and non-threatening. His eyes studied Beverly's injured hand, the dark stain spreading from the wound. "And I know what you're becoming. That wasn't full bond activation, but it was close. You fed it blood without the medallion. That's unprecedented. I had to save her." "I know." Something shifted in Clayton's expression. "Which is why I'm going to do something very against protocol." He reached into his jacket and pulled out medical supplies, bandages, antiseptic, basic healing herbs. Started tending to Beverly's hand with surprising gentleness. "What are you doing?" Beverly asked, suspicious. "Making a choice." Clayton's hands were steady as he wrapped her palm. "I've been an enforcer for 8 years. Followed every order, completed every mission. 23 confirmed kills." His jaw tightened. "I told myself it was necessary, that I was protecting the packs from real threats." He met her eyes. "But you're not a threat. You're a scared Omega who just risked her life to save a child. And I'm tired of killing people who don't deserve it." Beverly's breath caught. "Your pack sent you to confirm cave activation and eliminate the threat." "Yes." Clayton finished bandaging her hand. "And I'm going to report that the cave remains dormant. The Omega is dead from exposure, and this territory is secure. They'll know you're lying." "Probably." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Which means I've just made myself a traitor." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. "So we'd better make it count." Beverly stared at his outstretched hand. This could be a trap, some elaborate scheme to gain her trust before finishing his mission. But something in his eyes, in the way he'd hesitated before threatening Emma, in the quiet resignation of someone who'd finally hit their moral limit. She took his hand. Clayton pulled her to her feet with careful strength. "The cave will call you back. The blood bond you started, it's incomplete, which makes it dangerous. The entity will try to force completion." "How do you know so much about this?" His expression darkened. "Because Northern Ridge sits on the ruins of the old capital. We have archives, forbidden texts that detail what the first bloodline could do." He looked toward the cave, which still glowed faintly in the distance. And what destroyed them? Emma tugged on Beverly's sleeve. I want to go home. Beverly's heart broke. Sweetheart, I can't take you back. They think I kidnapped you. I'll return her. Clayton knelt beside Emma. I'll tell them you died in the cave collapse, and I rescued her from the rubble. She's too young to contradict the story effectively. Won't they question, Wayne wanted you dead. He'll be satisfied with that outcome. Clayton's voice held bitter knowledge. He won't look too closely at the details as long as his problem is solved. Beverly wanted to argue, to find another way, but Clayton was right. Emma needed to go home to her family. And Beverly needed to figure out what she was becoming. Thank you, she whispered. Clayton's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the professional enforcer mask slipped entirely. She saw exhaustion beneath it, guilt, and something else, a spark of connection, of recognition. Two people who'd been forced into roles they never wanted, finally choosing differently. Don't thank me yet, he said softly. This isn't over. Wayne orchestrated your banishment for a reason, and once he realizes the cave is active, he stood, scooping Emma into his arms. You have, maybe, 3 days before he sends a real hunting party. Hide. Learn to control what you started. And whatever you do, don't complete the bond until you understand the full price. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Your betrayer, Maria Garner. She didn't act alone. Wayne promised her something valuable enough to risk framing you. Find out what, and you'll understand why this is happening. Then he was gone, melting into the forest with Emma secure in his arms. Beverly stood alone in the darkness, her bandaged hand throbbing, the cave's pull already growing stronger in her chest. She could feel the entity waiting, patient now that it had tasted her blood. 3 days until the real hunters came. 3 days to master power she didn't understand. 3 days to uncover why Wayne wanted her specifically in that cave. The forest around her fell silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. And from the direction of Death's Hollow, Beverly heard the entity's voice, clearer now, almost affectionate. Come back to me, daughter. We have so much work to do. Chapter 4. Sealed Together. Beverly made it exactly 12 steps back toward the cave before her legs locked up. The pull was magnetic now, a hook buried deep in her sternum dragging her forward. Her bandaged hand burned where the blood had touched stone, the dark stain spreading up her wrist like roots seeking purchase. She could feel the entity's hunger, its eagerness, its absolute certainty that she would return. You can't run from me, it purred. I'm in you now, part of your blood, your breath, your beating heart. Shut up, Beverly hissed, wrapping her arms around herself. The night air had grown colder, or maybe that was just the power leaching warmth from her body. I didn't complete the bond, Clayton said. Clayton knows nothing. The voice rippled with amusement. 3 drops of blood on sacred ground. That's all it takes to start the thread. And once the thread is woven, daughter, it only pulls tighter. Beverly wanted to deny it, but her feet were already moving. 1 step, another. Like a puppet with invisible strings, she walked back through the forest toward the cave that would either save her or destroy her. She'd almost reached the entrance when the ground opened up beneath her. Beverly fell hard, the air punching from her lungs as she crashed onto cold stone. Not a natural cave-in, the floor had shifted deliberately, dropping her into a chamber below the main cavern. Darkness pressed in from all sides, absolute and suffocating. Then, light bloomed, not the sickly silver white from before, but warm amber that revealed she wasn't alone. Clayton stood across the chamber, weapons drawn, looking as shocked as she felt. What? He started. The floor above them sealed shut with a grinding sound of stone on stone. They were trapped. Perfect, the entity's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Now we have time to talk. No more running, no more pretending, just truth. Beverly scrambled to her feet, backing against the far wall. You said you were leaving. You were taking Emma back. I did. I was. Clayton's eyes darted around the chamber. searching for exits. I left her with my second in command, half a mile out. Told them to return her safely while I confirmed cave stability. His jaw tightened. Apparently the cave had other ideas. The walls around them weren't bare stone. Symbols covered every surface, the same spiraling patterns from above, but older, deeper, carved with such force that the rock itself seemed scarred. And in the center of the chamber stood an altar of black stone, the medallion floating above it now, pulsing with light that made Beverly's eyes water. "You need each other," the entity said, almost gentle. "So I'm giving you time to understand that." "Let us out," Clayton demanded, his voice hard with command. "When you're ready, not before." The chamber shuddered. The walls began to close in slowly, inexorably, like the chamber itself was breathing. Clayton immediately moved to the nearest wall, searching for weaknesses, pressure points, anything that might trigger a release. Beverly felt it, then the entity's intention, clear as spoken words. This wasn't just imprisonment, it was a test. "It wants us to tell the truth," she said quietly. Clayton turned. "What?" "The cave, the entity. It feeds on truth the way it feeds on blood and fear." Beverly approached the altar slowly, drawn by the medallion's pull. "The symbols. They're not just decorative. They're a binding spell. Truth carved in pain to hold something that exists on lies." "How do you know that?" "I don't know. Beverly touched one of the symbols, and knowledge flooded through her, not her knowledge, but her ancestors. Generations of queens who'd stood in this very chamber, who'd bled on this very stone. My bloodline created this prison. They bound the entity here, with the one thing it couldn't corrupt. Absolute truth." The walls groaned closer. They had maybe 10 minutes before the chamber crushed them. Clayton's expression was grim. "So we confess? Tell it our deepest secrets and hope it lets us go?" "I think it's more specific than that." Beverly studied the symbols, the pattern of them forming a spiral that led to the altar. "It wants our truth, yours and mine, the things we've hidden from the world." She looked at him, from each other. "I don't even know you." "Then start talking." For a long moment, Clayton said nothing. Then, with the resigned air of a man who'd run out of alternatives, he began. "My name is Clayton Lyons. I'm 26 years old. I've been Northern Ridge's enforcer since I was 18. His voice was flat, reciting facts. "I've killed 23 people on direct orders from my alpha. Some were rogues, some were traitors, and some," his jaw worked, "some were innocent. Like you would have been." The walls stopped moving, not retreating, but paused waiting. "My father was the previous enforcer," Clayton continued, words coming harder now. "He taught me everything: how to track, how to kill efficiently, how to follow orders without question." His hands clenched into fists. "And when the Alpha decided my father knew too many pack secrets, when he became a liability, I was the one ordered to eliminate him." Beverly's breath caught. "Clayton, I did it," his voice cracked. He looked me in the eye and told me he understood. That duty came before blood. That he'd trained me well. Clayton's storm-gray eyes glistened. "I put a blade through his heart because my alpha commanded it, and I've hated myself every day since." The chamber shifted. One wall pulled back slightly, a few precious inches of breathing room. "Truth accepted," the entity whispered. "Your turn, daughter." Beverly's throat tightened. She'd spent her whole life being invisible, keeping secrets, protecting herself from scrutiny. The idea of exposing her deepest shame to a stranger, to an enforcer who might still kill her, felt like skinning herself alive. But the walls were closing again. Slower this time, but inevitable. "My name is Beverly Hull," she forced out. "I'm 18 years old. I was banished from my pack 3 days ago for a crime I didn't commit." Her voice shook. "Maria Garner framed me. She planted stolen pack funds in my belongings and testified against me. I watched her do it. I knew, And I said nothing. Clayton frowned. Why not? Because part of me wanted to be banished. The words tore free like infected tissue. Part of me was grateful. Beverly's vision blurred with tears. I hated that pack. Hated the way they treated Omegas like disposable tools. Hated serving people who wouldn't spit on me if I was burning. She wrapped her arms around herself. But more than that, I hated myself for not having the courage to leave. For being too afraid, too weak, too pathetic to choose anything better. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Maria gave me an excuse. A reason to finally escape that didn't require me to be brave. The truth settled like lead in her stomach. Beverly had never admitted it before, not even to herself, that somewhere beneath the anger and betrayal, there'd been relief, freedom forced upon her because she'd been too cowardly to seize it herself. The walls retreated another foot. Deeper, the entity commanded. These are surface truths. I want the rot beneath. What more do you want? Beverly demanded. Tell him what you are, what you're afraid of becoming. Clayton watched her steadily. I already know you're descended from the first bloodline. That doesn't scare me. It should, Beverly's hands trembled, because my mother didn't just die in childbirth. She merged with the entity, became the thing everyone feared. For 10 years, she ruled as a dark queen, conquered packs, killed anyone who opposed her, bathed in the blood of her enemies. She looked at Clayton with desperate honesty. She only broke free when she got pregnant with me, used her last shred of humanity to expel the entity and die giving birth, so I wouldn't be born already corrupted. Beverly's voice cracked. But she failed, because I can feel it in me, that hunger, that rage, that desire to hurt everyone who's ever hurt me. I'm not afraid of the entity because it's foreign. I'm afraid because it feels like home. The chamber stilled. Complete silence, except for their breathing. Then Clayton spoke, his voice rough. My father told me something before I killed him. He said the difference between a good man and a monster isn't the darkness inside them. It's what they choose to do with it. He crossed the chamber, closing the distance between them. You risked your life for a child you barely knew, fed the entity just enough power to save her, then ran instead of embracing it fully. His eyes held hers. That's not a monster, Beverly. That's someone fighting like hell to stay human. But for how long? Beverly whispered. It's in my blood now. Every time I'm scared or angry, it grows stronger. What happens when I can't fight it anymore? Then you won't fight alone. The words hung between them, simple and impossible. Clayton reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her bandaged hand in his. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm, not the entity's power, but something older and more fundamental. Recognition. Connection. Why are you helping me? Beverly asked. You don't know me. You were sent to kill me. Because killing you would be wrong. Clayton's thumb traced gentle circles on her wrist. And I'm tired of following wrong orders. Tired of being the blade someone else wields. His voice dropped. Tired of being alone with the weight of all the blood on my hands. How touching, the entity purred. But truth requires vulnerability. Little Alpha, tell her the rest. Clayton's expression tightened. There's more. Tell me. He took a breath. I wasn't sent just to confirm cave activation. Wayne Norris specifically requested me for this mission. Clayton's eyes met hers. Because he knows I don't fail. If I reported you dead, you'd be dead. No one would question it. Beverly's stomach dropped. So this is not a trap. I swear. Clayton's grip on her hand tightened. But you need to know Wayne didn't banish you randomly. He knew about your bloodline. Has known for years, according to the mission brief. His voice was grim. He wanted you in this cave specifically. Wanted you to activate it. Why? I don't know. The brief didn't say. But Maria's involvement, the timing, your specific banishment to Death's Hollow. Clayton shook his head. This was orchestrated, all of it. The walls suddenly retreated fully, snapping back to their original positions. The ceiling above cracked open, revealing the main chamber and a path to the surface. The test was complete. Truth acknowledged, the entity said, satisfaction coloring its tone. You've earned passage. For now. Clayton didn't release her hand. We should leave, before it changes its mind. But Beverly was staring at the medallion, still floating above the altar, pieces clicking together in her mind. Wayne wanted me to bond with it. That's why he sent an enforcer he knew might hesitate. He was gambling that you'd give me time to complete the bond. But why? What does he gain? I don't know yet. Beverly looked at Clayton, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, the entity's power stirred beneath her skin, responding to her anger. When I do, Wayne Norris is going to regret ever learning my name. Clayton studied her face, the determination there, the rage barely leashed, the darkness creeping in at the edges. If you go down that path, you might not come back. I know, so don't go alone. His hand squeezed hers. Let me help. We figure this out together. We control the power together, and we make sure you don't lose yourself along the way. Beverly searched his face for deception and found only weary honesty. An enforcer who'd finally found someone worth breaking his oaths for. You barely know me. I know enough. Clayton's thumb brushed across her knuckles. I know you're brave and reckless, and trying desperately to be good in a world that's never been good to you. His voice softened. I know that being near you is the first time in 8 years I've felt like something other than a weapon. The pull between them was magnetic, not the entity's manipulation, but genuine attraction forged in shared truth and desperate circumstances. Beverly felt it like gravity, drawing them together. Clayton must have felt it too, because he leaned closer, his free hand rising to cup her face. Tell me to stop. Beverly didn't. Instead, she closed the distance, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that tasted like freedom and defiance and the beginning of something neither of them could afford but both desperately needed. The entity's laughter echoed through the chamber, but for once, Beverly didn't care. Chapter 5. The Blood Price. The kiss broke when Beverly felt it a violent tug in her chest that doubled her over with a gasp. Clayton caught her before she fell, his hands steady on her shoulders. What's wrong? The bond. Beverly's vision swam. Through the connection she'd started with those 3 drops of blood, she could see through someone else's eyes. Feel their exhilaration. Taste their victory. Someone else found the other piece. What other piece? Beverly stumbled toward the altar, her bandaged hand burning. The medallion still floated there, but something was different. It looked incomplete, like half of a whole. Oh, you clever girl, the entity crooned. You finally understand. There were always 2, Beverly whispered, pieces clicking together. The binding spell required balance, light and dark. 2 halves to contain one whole. She looked at Clayton with dawning horror. I started a bond with half the entity's power, and someone just claimed the other half. Through the fragmentary connection, Beverly saw flames, her old pack's territory, buildings burning, people screaming, and standing in the center of the destruction, medallion blazing around her neck, was Maria Garner. No. Beverly's legs gave out. Clayton caught her again, lowering them both to the ground. No. 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 She could feel Maria's intentions through the bond, crystal clear and utterly merciless. Revenge for years of being overlooked as a beta. Power to claim what she'd always deserved. And partnership with Wayne, who'd promised her status and authority if she helped eliminate the one person who could stop them. Beverly. She's killing them, Beverly choked out. Everyone who ever dismissed her, everyone who made her feel small. She's burning through the pack like wildfire. Clayton's expression went cold and professional. How many dead? I don't know. 6? 8? Beverly clutched her head as another wave of Maria's euphoria washed through her. She's not stopping. Wayne promised her power, and now she has it. Wayne. Clayton's voice was flat. He orchestrated all of this, got you banished to activate your half of the entity, then gave Maria access to the other half once you'd done the hard work of breaking the seal. But why? Beverly demanded. What does he gain from two Omegas with dark power? Control, the entity answered, its voice splitting between their minds. Your bloodline created the binding. Only your bloodline can complete it, or destroy it. Wayne wants neither. He wants you divided, fighting each other, burning through your power until there's nothing left but husks he can use. Clayton helped Beverly to her feet. We need to stop Maria before she kills everyone. I can't, Beverly's voice cracked. I barely have any power. She bonded properly, 3 drops of blood on the medallion itself. I just bled on the ground. I'm connected, but not empowered. Then, complete the bond. Are you insane? Beverly pulled away from him. You heard what it said. The entity wants completion. If I put on that medallion, you'll have the power to stop Maria from massacring innocent people. Clayton's eyes were hard. I know the cost. But what's the alternative? Let her kill everyone while you stay pure? The entity's voice was honey-sweet poison. He's right, daughter. You wanted to be brave. Here's your chance. 3 drops of blood on silver, and I'll give you everything you need to save them. Beverly stared at the medallion. It was right there, floating within reach. All she had to do was take it, bleed on it, accept the full weight of the power her ancestors had wielded, and become the monster everyone always feared she'd be. There has to be another way, she whispered. There isn't, not in time. Through the bond, Beverly felt another death. Then another. Maria was accelerating, drunk on power and years of suppressed rage. In minutes, the entire pack would be ash. Clayton's hand found hers. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Beverly looked at him, this enforcer who'd killed his own father on orders, who carried guilt like a second skin, who'd chosen her over everything he'd been taught to value. She thought about Emma, safely returned to her family, only to face this new threat. About the people in her old pack who'd been cruel, yes, but who didn't deserve to burn. About the person she wanted to be versus the person circumstances demanded she become. If I do this, Beverly said slowly, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If I lose myself to it, if the entity takes over and I become like my mother, you'll stop me. She squeezed his hand. You'll do what needs to be done. Clayton's expression was anguished. Beverly, promise me. He searched her face for a long moment, then nodded, once, sharp and final. I promise. Beverly released his hand and approached the altar. The medallion pulsed with anticipation, rotating slowly, as if examining her. Up close, she could see the intricate carvings, 3 moons overlapping, surrounded by symbols in a language that was simultaneously foreign and intimately familiar. That's it, the entity encouraged. Just reach out. Let the power flow. You deserve this, after everything they've done to you. Beverly's fingers brushed the silver. Cold shot up her arm, followed immediately by searing heat. The medallion hummed, recognizing her blood, her lineage, her right to wield it. 1 drop would complete the bond Maria had started on the other half. 2 drops would split the entity's consciousness between them. 3 drops would give Beverly everything: full power, full control, full corruption. She pulled out the sharp stone she'd used before, the one still stained with her blood, pressed it against her already injured palm, opening the wound fresh. Blood welled up, dark and eager. Clayton watched from behind her, body tense, ready to intervene if needed. Beverly held her hand over the medallion. 1 drop fell. The entity screamed in pleasure. Power flooded through her, intoxicating, overwhelming, everything she'd never been allowed to have. Strength, authority, the ability to make people pay attention, to make them fear, to make them pay. A 2nd drop fell. The connection to Maria sharpened painfully. Beverly could feel her now, could sense her exact location, could taste her thoughts. Maria was laughing. setting fire to the pack leader's house with Wayne inside. But Wayne wasn't burning, he was watching, protected by his own power, pleased with how his plan was unfolding. "One more," the entity begged. "One more, and you'll have everything. You'll be unstoppable, immortal, free." Beverly raised her hand for the third drop, and smashed the medallion with the stone instead. The silver shattered, not cleanly, but fractured into 3 pieces, large central fragment and 2 smaller shards. The entity's scream this time was rage and pain and betrayal. "What have you done?" "Change the rules," Beverly gasped, falling to her knees. The partial power was still there, coursing through her from the 2 drops of blood, but it was fractured now, incomplete. Enough to survive, but not enough to lose herself completely. Clayton rushed forward. "Beverly!" "The third piece," she managed, pointing at the smallest shard. It was rolling toward the chamber's edge, glowing with its own terrible light. "Don't let it." Too late. The shard fell through a crack in the floor, disappearing into depths they couldn't see. The entity's presence split part of it still with Beverly, part with Maria through her completed bond, and part elsewhere, seeking, hunting for a new host. "You foolish child," it hissed. "You think breaking the prison makes you free? You've just unleashed me in pieces. And pieces are so much harder to fight than a whole." Beverly could feel it, the entity dividing itself, adapting, learning. She'd meant to weaken it by shattering the medallion. Instead, she'd given it the ability to be in multiple places at once. "What did I do?" she whispered. Clayton pulled her into his arms. "You made a choice. Now we live with it." Through her fragmentary bond, Beverly felt Maria realize what had happened, felt her fury at being denied full power, felt her turn toward Death's Hollow with murder in her heart. "She's coming," Beverly said silently to Clayton. "Let her." His arms tightened around her protectively. "We'll be ready." But even as he said it, Beverly felt something else through the bond, something that made her blood run cold. Maria wasn't alone anymore. She'd found an ally, someone who'd been waiting for exactly this opportunity. Wayne appeared in Beverly's fragmented vision, standing beside Maria in the ruins of the burning pack. He was smiling, and in his hand, glowing with terrible purpose, was another medallion. Not a broken piece, an entirely separate artifact. 3 prisons, the entity whispered gleefully. "Did you really think there was only one? 3 bloodlines, 3 bindings, 3 entities." Clayton felt Beverly's body go rigid with shock. "What is it?" "We're not fighting one entity," Beverly said, her voice hollow. "We're fighting 3, and Wayne just awakened the second one." The cave trembled, the walls cracked, and from somewhere deep beneath Death's Hollow, something ancient and hungry stirred in response to its siblings' awakening. "Welcome to the true game, daughter," the entity purred. "Now, let's see if you can survive it." Outside, thunder cracked despite the clear sky. Inside, Beverly held Clayton and wondered if breaking the medallion had saved them or doomed them all. Through the bond, she felt Maria and Wayne turning toward the cave. Felt their intention, clear and brutal. They were coming to finish what they'd started. And Beverly had 3 days, maybe less, to learn how to control a fractured entity before it consumed her completely, or her enemies consumed her first. The choice she'd made in breaking the medallion had bought her time and power. But the cost was still being calculated. And payment, Beverly knew with cold certainty, would come due soon. If you felt Beverly's betrayal when she learned her entire life was orchestrated, hit subscribe. Don't be like the pack that abandoned her. Be someone who stays. Chapter 6, Enemies at the Gate. Beverly woke to the taste of ash and copper. She'd collapsed after breaking the medallion, her body unable to process the fractured power flooding through her. Clayton had carried her to a sheltered alcove in the cave's upper chamber, keeping watch while she fought through fever dreams of fire and blood. Now, 2 days later, she could feel the changes in her body. Her white hair had developed black streaks that moved independently, like smoke caught in invisible wind. Her eyes shifted color when emotions ran high, silver when calm, black when angry. And the hunger was constant, a gnawing emptiness that food couldn't satisfy. "You need to feed the power," the entity whispered. It was weaker now, fragmented, but still present in her mind. Fear, pain, life force. Choose, or it will choose for you. "Shut up," Beverly muttered, pressing her palms against her temples. Clayton appeared with water and dried meat supplies he'd retrieved from a hidden cache outside the cave. "Talking to it again?" "It won't stop." Beverly took the water gratefully. "It's like having a starving animal in my head that only speaks in temptation." "Can you control it at all?" Beverly held up her hand. Shadows coalesced around her fingers, forming shapes wolf, bird, serpent before dissolving. Small things. Parlor tricks. Nothing that would stop Maria or Wayne. "It's more than you had 2 days ago." True. Beverly had spent hours practicing, learning to channel the fractured power through sheer will. The entity fought her at every turn, trying to push her toward darker uses, toward feeding it the fear and pain it craved. But she'd discovered something important. The more she resisted, the more the power adapted to her intentions rather than the entity's desires. It was slow, painful, like teaching a vicious dog to heel through nothing but stubborn patience. But it was working. "Maria's getting closer," Beverly said, feeling the pull through their shared bond. "She's maybe a day out, moving slowly, burning everything in her path." Clayton's expression darkened. "And Wayne?" "He split off, went north." Beverly closed her eyes, following the threads of power that connected them all. "Toward Northern Ridge. Your pack." Clayton went very still. "Why?" Beverly saw it through the fragmentary vision. Wayne approaching Northern Ridge's Alpha, the second medallion glowing around his neck. An offer being made, an alliance forged. "He's recruiting," Beverly whispered, "offering power to your Alpha in exchange for military support. He wants to unite the packs under his control before dealing with us." "My Alpha will never—" Clayton stopped, his face drained of color. "He'll accept. Of course he'll accept. He's been looking for an excuse to expand territory for years." Beverly touched his arm. "We can warn them. Tell them what the medallions really do. They won't listen to a banished Omega and a traitor enforcer." Clayton's voice was bitter. "We're the enemy now, both of us." A sound echoed through the cave, footsteps on stone. Multiple people moving with military precision. Clayton's hand went to his weapon as Beverly scrambled to her feet, power flaring instinctively around her hands. But the voice that called out was small and terrified. "Beverly? Are you in there?" "Emma." Beverly's heart stopped. She rushed to the cave entrance, Clayton right behind her, to find the little girl standing in the pre-dawn darkness. But Emma wasn't alone. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows, stood 5 figures Beverly recognized from her old pack. And leading them, bruised and bleeding but very much alive, was the pack's healer, Jenny Freeman. "Emma, get back!" Beverly called, power crackling through her fingers. This could be a trap, Maria using the child as bait. But Jenny stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. "We're not here to fight. We're here because we need your help." Clayton's weapon stayed trained on the group. "Explain." Quickly. Jenny's voice shook. "Maria came through the pack like wildfire 2 days ago. She killed pack leader Wayne's inner circle, anyone who'd supported your banishment. Then she made a proclamation." The healer's eyes met Beverly's. She said she was the new Alpha, that the old order was dead, that anyone who opposed her would burn. One of the other wolves, a young beta named Carrie Dodson, stepped forward. "Some of us ran. We've been hiding in the forest, trying to figure out what to do. But Maria's searching. She can smell us somehow, track us through the trees." Through the bond, the entity supplied helpfully. "She's learning to use the power as a hunting tool." "Clever girl." "Why come to me?" Beverly asked, even though she already knew the answer. Because you're the only one who can stop her, Jenny said simply. We heard the rumors that you survived the cave, that you have power now. We're hoping. She swallowed hard. We're hoping you'll help us. Beverly laughed, sharp and bitter. You want me to save the pack that banished me? That threw me away like garbage? Yes. Jenny didn't flinch. I know we don't deserve it. I know I don't. I stood there and did nothing while they burned your pack marks. I was a coward. Her voice cracked. But there are children still in the territory. Innocents who had no part in your banishment. Maria doesn't care. She's killing everyone. Beverly felt the familiar pull, that same desperate need to protect the innocent that had made her save Emma. But this time, anger warred with compassion. These people had abandoned her. Why should she risk herself for them? Because you're better than they are, Clayton said quietly, somehow knowing exactly what she was thinking. Because you won't let children die just to prove a point. Beverly closed her eyes. Hated that he was right. Hated that even now, even after everything, she couldn't walk away from people who needed help. Fine, she bit out. But I have conditions. Jenny nodded eagerly. Anything. First, you tell me everything you know about Wayne's plan. Why he wanted me in this cave specifically. What he promised Maria. All of it. Wayne kept records, Carrie offered. Hidden files in his office. I worked as his assistant. I know where they are. Good. Second. Beverly looked at Clayton. You help us evacuate the remaining pack members to neutral territory. No one fights unless absolutely necessary. Agreed. And third. Beverly's voice went cold. When this is over, when Maria is dealt with, you tell everyone the truth, that I was framed, that you all abandoned an innocent person to save yourselves, that you only came crawling back when you needed something. The words landed like physical blows. Beverly saw shame on several faces, anger on others. But Jenny just nodded. We'll tell them, the healer said quietly. You have my word. Clayton lowered his weapon. We need to move fast. If Maria can track them through scent, she'll find this location soon. She already has, Beverly said, feeling the shift in the bond. Maria's attention had turned toward Death's Hollow, sharp and predatory. She knows they're here. She's coming. Emma started crying. Jenny pulled the child close, looking at Beverly with desperate hope. What do we do? Beverly felt the entity stir, excited by the approaching conflict. Through the fractured bond, she could sense Maria's power stronger than Beverly's, more practiced, backed by Wayne's training and resources. In a direct fight, Beverly would lose. But she didn't have to fight directly. Everyone inside the cave, Beverly ordered. Now. But, Carrie started. The cave responds to my bloodline. It's the only place I can control enough to make a stand. Beverly looked at Clayton. Can you get them to the lower chambers? The ones we were trapped in? Understanding flashed across his face. The truth chambers. You're going to use the binding spell. If Maria wants power so badly, let's see how she handles facing herself. They moved quickly. Clayton herded the refugees into the cave, Emma clinging to his hand with desperate trust. Beverly stayed at the entrance, feeling Maria's approach like a storm building on the horizon. This is foolish, the entity warned. She's stronger than you, more ruthless. She'll kill them all, and you won't be able to stop her. Maybe, Beverly murmured. But she doesn't know this place like I do. And she's never had to face the truth about what she's become. Maria emerged from the tree line as the sun crested the horizon. She looked different, taller somehow, wreathed in shadows that writhed like living things. The complete medallion hung around her neck, pulsing with dark light. Her eyes were pure black, no whites visible. Beverly. Maria's voice echoed with the entity's power. I was hoping you'd make this interesting. Let them go, Beverly called back. This is between us. Is it? Maria tilted her head, unnaturally bird-like. I think it's between all of them and me. They made me small, made me weak, made me believe I deserved nothing. Her smile was terrible. Now, I'm going to teach them what nothing really looks like. She raised her hand, and fire erupted from her palm, not natural flame, but something darker, hungrier. It raced toward the cave entrance. Beverly met it with shadows. The two powers collided in a cascade of sparks and screaming energy. Beverly felt the strain immediately. Maria was right. She was stronger, her bond complete where Beverly's was fractured. But Beverly had home advantage. She pulled the cave's power around herself like armor, using the ancient binding spells carved into the stone to amplify her limited strength. The shadows thickened, forming a barrier that Maria's fire couldn't penetrate. Clever, Maria acknowledged. But you can't hide in there forever. Don't need forever, just long enough. Beverly felt Clayton moving through the lower chambers, felt him activating the truth spell the way she'd shown him. The cave began to shift, responding to her bloodline's command. Walls rearranged, passages opened and closed. The entire structure became a labyrinth designed to funnel Maria exactly where Beverly needed her. "What are you doing?" Maria demanded, noticing the changes. "Giving you a choice." Beverly's voice echoed through the cave, amplified by ancient magic. "Face the truth about what you've become, or run. Those are your options." Maria's laughter was sharp as broken glass. "I already know what I've become. A queen, a conqueror, everything I was always meant to be." "Then you won't mind proving it." The cave entrance sealed behind Maria as she stepped inside, stone grinding into place with terrible finality. Maria didn't even flinch, just smiled wider, flames dancing across her fingertips. "You've trapped yourself with me, little Omega. Do you have any idea how stupid that is?" "We'll see." Beverly led her deeper, using the bond between them to guide Maria through the shifting passages. She could feel Clayton and the others safe in the lower chambers, protected by the same truth spell that had tested her and Clayton days ago. But this time, Beverly wasn't looking for truth. She was looking for reflection. They reached the central chamber, the one where the shattered medallion pieces still lay scattered. Maria stopped, recognition flickering across her face. "This is where you broke it," she said softly. "Where you fractured the entity and ruined everything." "Where I saved myself from becoming you," Beverly corrected. Maria's eyes blazed. "You think you're better than me? You, who fed the entity blood to save one worthless child? Who's using the same power you claim to despise?" "I never said I was better." Beverly's hands clenched into fists. "But at least I'm trying not to lose myself. You dove in head first and called it freedom." "Because it is freedom!" Maria screamed. The chamber shook with her rage. "You don't understand what it's like, being invisible your whole life. Being the beta no one remembers, the assistant no one values, the person everyone overlooks." Tears cut tracks through the ash on her face. "Wayne promised me power, promised me that if I helped him, I'd finally matter. And he kept his promise, Beverly. I matter now. People see me, fear me, respect me." "They fear the entity wearing your face," Beverly said quietly. "Not you. You've given up everything that made you Maria, and for what? So Wayne can use you as a weapon? Wayne doesn't control me. Then why did he tell you to come here? Why did he send you after refugees instead of consolidating his own power?" Beverly took a step forward. "You're still being used, Maria. Still being overlooked, just in a different way." The words hit their mark. Beverly saw doubt flicker in Maria's black eyes, saw the woman beneath the monster recognize the truth. Then the entity reasserted control, and Maria's expression went cold. "Enough talking." She raised both hands, power building to lethal levels. "Time to finish this." The chamber filled with dark fire. Beverly braced herself, pulling every scrap of power she could from her fractured bond, and prayed it would be enough. Chapter 7. The First Battle. The fire hit Beverly like a physical wall. She threw up a shield of shadows, but Maria's power punched through it, searing her arms and chest. Beverly screamed, stumbling backward as pain lanced through her body. "Feed me," the entity shrieked. "Take her fear, her pain, use it." "No," Beverly gasped, fighting to maintain control even as her skin blistered. She wouldn't give in, wouldn't become the monster. Maria advanced, flames wreathing her body like a second skin. "You're weak. You always were. That's why Wayne chose you for the cave. He knew you'd activate it but be too pathetic to actually use it." She gestured, and fire erupted from the walls themselves. The cave was turning against Beverly, responding to Maria's stronger bond with her entity. Beverly dove behind the altar, using the broken medallion pieces as cover. Through her fragmented connection, she could feel Clayton in the lower chambers, feel his desperation to help her. But he was mortal. Coming up here would mean his death. "Then take my power," the entity offered. "Fully, completely. Let me in, and I'll save him. Save you. Save everyone." "There has to be another way," Beverly whispered. "There isn't. Not this time." Maria rounded the altar, power crackling around her fingers. Come out. Let's end this like we should have ended it years ago." Beverly's mind raced. She couldn't overpower Maria directly, couldn't outfight her, but maybe she didn't have to. The truth chambers had worked on her and Clayton because they'd forced confrontation with buried shame. Maria's shame was buried under layers of power and rage, but it was still there. Beverly had felt it in that moment of doubt, seen it flicker behind the entity's control. She just needed to dig deeper. Beverly stood, hands raised in surrender. "You're right. I can't beat you." Maria paused, suspicious. "So you're giving up?" "I'm accepting reality." Beverly's voice was steady despite her terror. "You're stronger, more powerful, more in control. You've won. This is a trick." "No trick." Beverly took a step forward, unarmed, vulnerable. "I just want to understand. Wayne promised you power, but what did you promise him?" Maria's expression flickered. "That's none of your business. He made you frame me, plant the evidence, testify against me, ensure my banishment." Beverly took another step. That must have taken planning, coordination, trust. She tilted her head. "Did he promise to make you his mate? His equal?" "Shut up. Or was it something else?" Beverly's voice was gentle now, probing like a surgeon with a scalpel. "Did he promise you'd finally be seen? Finally matter to someone who had actual power?" "I said shut up." Maria's flames flared hotter. But Beverly pressed on, using everything she'd learned about Maria over the years. "You loved him, didn't you? Followed him like a loyal dog, did everything he asked, believed that one day he'd see you as more than just a useful tool." Maria's hands trembled. "He does see me. He gave me this power. He gave you a leash." Beverly's voice cracked like a whip. "You're still doing exactly what he tells you, still following orders, still desperate for his approval." "That's not." "When was the last time he actually spoke to you directly?" Beverly demanded. "Since you bonded with the entity? Since you became powerful in your own right?" She saw the answer in Maria's eyes. "He hasn't, has he? He gave you the medallion and sent you away, told you to deal with me while he consolidated power elsewhere." Maria's flames sputtered. "You don't know anything. I know he's using both of us." Beverly gestured at the shattered medallion pieces. "He wanted me to activate the cave, wanted you to complete the bond, all so he could swoop in with his own entity and control the ones we awakened." Her voice dropped. "We're both tools to him, Maria. The only difference is I realized it before it was too late." For a moment, just a heartbeat, Maria looked lost, young, afraid. The entity's control slipped, and Beverly saw her former packmate underneath. The beta who'd smiled at her once in the orphanage, who'd shared bread when food was scarce, who'd been kind before Wayne taught her to be cruel. "It's not too late," Beverly said softly. "We can still fight back, together." Maria's black eyes cleared slightly. "Beverly, the cave entrance exploded inward. Wayne Norris stood in the destruction, the second medallion blazing around his neck. His form was massive now, enhanced by the entity bonded to him, and he wasn't alone. 6 Northern Ridge enforcers flanked him, including Beverly's worst fear, Clayton's alpha, the man who'd ordered Clayton to kill his own father. "How touching," Wayne said, his voice layered with the entity's power. "My 2 pawns finally figured out the game." He smiled. "Pity you're both too weak to do anything about it." Maria spun toward him, flames reigniting. "Wayne, I killed everyone I told you to kill? Good." Wayne barely looked at her. "Your part is done, Maria. The entity you carry is nearly exhausted from all that burning. Time to transfer it to someone who can actually use it properly." Maria's face went white. "What? Did you think I wanted you?" Wayne laughed. "You were always just the activation key, a disposable beta willing to do anything for scraps of affection." He raised his hand, and power lashed out, not fire, but something darker, hooks of shadow that sank into Maria's chest, into the medallion she wore. Maria screamed as the entity was ripped from her. The medallion cracked, and Wayne's power pulled the creature free, dragging it toward himself. Beverly moved without thinking. She threw her own fractured power between them, disrupting Wayne's pull. It wasn't much, barely a shield, but it was enough to make Wayne's extraction falter. "Run!" Beverly shouted at Maria. But Maria didn't run. She collapsed, gasping, the medallion falling from her neck. Without the entity's power, she was just a beta again. Weak, human, helpless. Wayne's attention focused on Beverly. "Interesting. The fractured bond makes you resistant to my pull." He studied her with cold assessment. "Perhaps you're more useful than I thought." Clayton's alpha stepped forward. "Wayne, our agreement was—" "I know what our agreement was, Robert." Wayne didn't even glance at him. "You get Northern Ridge's expansion rights. I get control of the entities. Everyone wins." Robert Case looked uncertain. "The entities are dangerous. If you lose control—" "I won't." Wayne's smile was sharp. "I've been planning this for 20 years, since I first found records of the first bloodline in my predecessor's private files." He looked at Beverly. "Did you know your mother came to my father? Begged him for protection while she was pregnant?" He refused. Turned her away because sheltering the cursed bloodline was too risky. Beverly's breath caught. "You knew about me the whole time. Since you were born, I've been watching, waiting, making sure you survived long enough to be useful." Wayne gestured at the cave. "Keeping you weak and overlooked so no one else would notice what you carried." The betrayal was total. Her entire life had been orchestrated, every kindness withheld, every cruelty permitted, all designed to keep her exactly where Wayne needed her. "Why?" Beverly's voice cracked. "If you wanted the power, why not just take me when I was a child?" "Because the bloodline awakens through trauma." Wayne's expression was clinical. "You needed to suffer, needed to be pushed to your breaking point. Only then would you be desperate enough to enter the cave, to activate the seal, to spill the blood required." He stepped closer. "I gave you everything you needed to become the key, and you performed perfectly." Beverly felt sick. Every horrible moment of her life, the orphanage, the cruelty, the banishment, had been engineered. She was Wayne's science experiment, his tool, his means to an end, and she'd played her part exactly as planned. "Now," Wayne said, raising both hands. Power built around him, his own entity plus the one he'd pulled from Maria. "Let's finish the collection. Give me your fractured bond, Beverly. It won't hurt much." The hooks of shadow lashed toward her. Beverly threw up shields, but they were paper-thin against Wayne's combined power. She felt the entity being torn from her chest, felt the connection she'd fought so hard to control being ripped away. Then Clayton was there, blade flashing, cutting through the shadow hooks with steel that glowed with unfamiliar symbols. "Blessed silver," he gritted out, standing between Beverly and Wayne. Your entities hate it. Wayne's eyes narrowed. Traitor. Robert, kill your former enforcer. Robert hesitated. Clayton met his alpha's gaze steadily. You ordered me to kill my father, Clayton said quietly. A good man who'd served you for 30 years. And I did it, because I thought duty mattered more than conscience. He raised his blessed blade. I won't make that mistake again. Robert's face twisted with rage. You dare. He dares, Beverly said, power flooding back into her now that Wayne's extraction had been interrupted. And so do I. She pulled every scrap of her fractured entity, every bit of power she'd learned to control, and unleashed it. Not at Wayne, he was too strong, but at the cave itself. The binding symbols blazed to life. The ancient spell her ancestors had carved into stone activated, responding to her blood, her will, her desperation. The cave began to collapse inward, not destroying itself but reforming, reshaping into the prison it was always meant to be. Wayne realized her intention too late. No. The walls closed in, stone grinding against stone. Beverly held the spell with everything she had, pouring her fractured power into the ancient magic. She couldn't trap Wayne, he was too strong, too prepared. But she could trap his allies. The Northern Ridge enforcers, caught off guard, were sealed in stone before they could react. Robert lunged for the exit, but Clayton was faster. A single strike with the blessed blade sent the Alpha crashing into the reforming wall, which absorbed him like quicksand. Everyone out, Beverly screamed. Now! Clayton grabbed Maria's unconscious form. Beverly reached for the cave's power one final time, creating a path to the lower chambers where the refugees waited. They ran as the entire structure reorganized itself, ancient magic overriding thousands of years of dormancy. Wayne's roar of fury shook the mountain. You can't hold me. I have two entities. I don't need to hold you, Beverly gasped, maintaining the spell through sheer willpower. Just slow you down. They burst into the lower chambers. The refugees were huddled together, terrified. Emma ran to Clayton, wrapping her arms around his legs. Clayton, Jenny Freeman pointed toward a side passage. That tunnel leads out, but it's unstable. Take it, Clayton ordered, passing Maria's unconscious form to Carrie. Get everyone to the forest. Don't stop until you reach neutral territory. What about you? Jenny asked. Clayton looked at Beverly. She was shaking with effort, blood pouring from her nose from the strain of holding the spell. The entity in her mind was screaming, furious at being used this way. We're buying you time, Clayton said. Now move. The refugees fled into the tunnel. Clayton returned to Beverly's side, his blessed blade ready. Can you hold him? He asked quietly. No. Beverly's voice was steady despite her terror. But I can make him choose between chasing them or stopping me. Above them, the cave groaned. Wayne was tearing through her spell, entity power ripping apart the ancient binding. In minutes, maybe seconds, he'd break free. Beverly made her decision. She grabbed the largest piece of her shattered medallion and pressed it to her chest. Beverly, no. Clayton reached for her, but it was too late. She drove the shard into her own heart. Chapter 8. The Entity Unleashed. Pain exploded through Beverly's chest, white-hot and absolute. But beneath it, something else stirred the fractured entity, no longer fighting her control but merging with her completely. Not through domination, but through desperate symbiosis. What are you doing? The entity screamed in her mind. Changing the rules, Beverly gasped. Again, the medallion shard wasn't destroying her. It was creating a new kind of bond, one forged in sacrifice rather than conquest. Her blood soaked into the silver, and the ancient magic recognized the pattern. Her ancestor, the first queen, had done exactly this, driven the binding into her own heart to contain the entity not through imprisonment, but through unity. The entity's consciousness flooded into Beverly's, and hers into it. For a horrible moment, she felt everything 500 years of isolation, of hunger, of rage at being trapped. The entity wasn't purely evil. It was lonely, desperate, driven mad by centuries of solitary confinement. "You could have freed me," it whispered. "Why didn't you?" "Because freedom without control would have destroyed everything," Beverly answered silently. "But maybe we don't need one or the other. Maybe we can be something new." The entity paused, considered. Then, incredibly, it laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. "Clever daughter. Your mother tried this too, but she was already corrupted, already too far gone." A pause. "You're different. Still human enough to anchor me. Still pure enough to—" Wayne burst through the ceiling, his combined entities roaring with fury. "What have you done?" Beverly stood, the medallion shard embedded in her chest glowing with silver-white light. Power flowed through her, not the corrupt, hungry darkness from before, but something balanced, controlled. The entity and her consciousness weren't fighting anymore. They were cooperating. "I made myself the prison," Beverly said, her voice layered with the entity's resonance. "Can't steal what's part of me now." Wayne's face twisted with rage. "You've ruined everything. That entity was mine to control. It was never yours." Beverly felt her body changing, white hair, now streaked with living shadow, eyes glowing silver, skin marked with the same spiraling symbols that covered the cave walls. "You wanted to collect them like weapons, but they're not tools, Wayne. They're living things, broken, twisted, but alive." Clayton stood beside her, blessed blade ready, watching Wayne with professional calculation. "Beverly, can you fight?" "I don't know." She flexed her fingers, feeling power respond instantly to her will. Shadows and light both, dancing together. "But I'm about to find out." Wayne attacked. Two entities worth of power lashed toward them, hooks of shadow, walls of flame, crushing force that could pulverize stone. Beverly met it with her unified power. Where Wayne's entities fought each other for dominance, hers worked in harmony. Shadow and light weren't opposites, they were partners, each amplifying the other. Her defense held where it should have shattered. "Impossible," Wayne snarled. "You have a fraction of what I have." "Quality over quantity," Beverly shot back, then nearly collapsed as maintaining the defense drained her rapidly. The bond was new, unstable. She could feel the entity struggling to match her intention, could feel her human consciousness barely holding the massive power in check. Clayton moved while Wayne was focused on Beverly. His blessed blade flashed toward Wayne's medallions. If he could sever even one connection, it might give them an advantage. But Wayne was faster than he looked. He caught Clayton's wrist, twisting hard, bone cracked. Clayton's blade clattered to the floor. "Predictable," Wayne growled, then threw Clayton across the chamber. The enforcer hit the wall with brutal force and didn't get up. "Clayton!" Beverly's control slipped. The entity surged forward, protective and furious. Shadows erupted from her body, lashing toward Wayne with lethal intent. Wayne blocked them, but barely. "So that's your weakness, the alpha," he smiled coldly. "How sentimental." He raised his hand toward Clayton's unconscious form. Dark fire built around his fingers, the killing kind, the type that would burn Clayton from the inside out. Beverly didn't think. She teleported, actually shifted through shadow, the way the entity had always been able to, and materialized between Wayne and Clayton. The fire hit her full force. Agony. Her shields held, but just barely. She could feel her skin burning, could smell her own flesh cooking. The entity screamed in her mind, trying to repair the damage, but Wayne's combined power was too much. "Let me take over," the entity begged. "Give me full control and I'll save you both." "No," Beverly gritted out through the pain. "We do this together, or not at all." Wayne advanced, building more fire. "You're going to die protecting him." How noble, how pointless. Beverly's vision blurred. She was losing blood, losing consciousness, losing the fragile balance that kept her and the entity unified. In moments, she'd either die or lose control completely. Then she felt it, a pulse of power from beneath them, from deep in the cave's foundation, where the third medallion shard had fallen. It had found a host. The floor exploded upward. A figure emerged from the depths, wreathed in power that made even Wayne step back. At first, Beverly couldn't make out who it was. They were covered in stone dust and shadow, transformed by the entity they'd bonded with. Then the figure spoke, and Beverly's heart stopped. Get away from her, Wayne. It was Maria, but not the broken, powerless Maria who'd been stripped of her entity. This was Maria transformed. She'd found the third medallion shard, the one Beverly had lost. And unlike before, this bonding was different, desperate, defensive, born from the need to survive rather than the hunger for power. Wayne whirled, genuinely shocked for the first time. That's impossible. You were empty, severed from your entity. Your entity, Maria corrected, not the cave's. She looked at her hands, shadows and light, dancing across her palms, just like Beverly's. When the shard fell, it called to me, offered a choice, die here, forgotten, or bond with it on equal terms. Her eyes met Wayne's, hard and clear. I chose life. There were only 2 medallions, Wayne said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. 2 bloodline prisons. 3, Beverly managed, using the wall to stay upright. The entity told me. 3 bloodlines. 3 bindings. She looked at Maria. Your grandmother was from the second line. That's why Wayne recruited you, not just to frame me, but because you had latent bloodline power too. Maria nodded slowly. My grandmother told me stories when I was little, about queens who ruled with shadow and light. I thought they were fairy tales. They were history, Beverly said. Your history. Mine. The legacy Wayne tried to steal. Wayne's expression shifted from shock to cold calculation. It doesn't matter. 2 fractured entities against my combined power. You'll still lose. But his voice held less certainty now, and Beverly could see why the cave was responding to 3 bloodline descendants now, the ancient magic recognizing them all. The binding spells carved into stone blazed brighter, creating a web of light that made even Wayne's stolen power look small. Clayton groaned, consciousness returning. Beverly wanted to go to him, but she couldn't break her defensive stance, not with Wayne poised to attack. Maria, Beverly said carefully, I know you hate me. I know Wayne used us both, but right now, I don't hate you. Maria's voice was quiet. I hate myself for believing Wayne's lies, for hurting you to feel powerful. She raised her hands, shadows coalescing. Let me make it right. Together? Beverly offered. Maria smiled, sad and tired, but genuine. Together. They moved in unison. 2 bloodline descendants, 2 fractured entities, 2 sources of ancient power combining not through domination but through cooperation. Their shadows intertwined, creating patterns that mirrored the binding spells on the walls. Wayne threw everything he had at them, fire and darkness, crushing force and tearing wind. His 2 entities worked against each other, even as they amplified his strength, creating power that should have obliterated anything in its path. But Beverly and Maria held. Their entities, fractured and new to cooperation, nevertheless recognized each other, recognized the original unity from before the first queens had split them into separate prisons. The power didn't just add, it multiplied, creating something greater than the sum of parts. The cave trembled. The ancient binding spells activated fully for the first time in 500 years, responding to the bloodline magic flowing through the chamber. Stone shifted, reformed, creating a new prison designed for exactly this moment. No, Wayne realized too late what was happening. No, I won't be sealed. I won't. The walls closed in, not to crush, but to contain. Beverly and Maria poured their combined power into the ancient spell, giving it the strength it needed to complete. Wayne's entities screamed in fury, fighting the binding with everything they had. But they'd been prisoners before. The cave remembered how to hold them. Stone flowed like water, wrapping around Wayne in layers. His entities tried to tear free, but Beverly and Maria's power held them fast. The medallions around Wayne's neck cracked, their magic disrupted by the overwhelming force of the binding spell. "You can't hold me forever," Wayne snarled. "I'll break free. His voice cut off as stone sealed over his mouth, his body, his stolen power. In moments, where Wayne had stood was now a pillar of dark stone, his form barely visible within like an insect trapped in amber. The cave fell silent. Beverly collapsed. The medallion shard in her chest pulsed once, twice, then went dark. The entity's presence in her mind didn't vanish, but it quieted, sleeping rather than imprisoned, resting rather than raging. Maria knelt beside her, equally exhausted. "Is he dead?" "No." Clayton limped over, cradling his broken wrist. "Just sealed. The binding spell keeps him alive but contained." He looked at the stone pillar. "For how long?" "Forever, if the spell holds." Beverly struggled to sit up. Every muscle screamed in protest. "Or until someone with bloodline power releases him. Then we make sure that never happens." Maria's voice was firm. She looked at Beverly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was terrible and wrong." Beverly met her eyes. "But you came back, helped when you could have run. That counts for something." Footsteps echoed from the tunnel. Jenny Freeman emerged, leading the refugees back now that the fighting had stopped. Emma broke free and ran to Clayton, throwing her arms around him despite his injuries. "You're alive," the little girl sobbed. "Barely," Clayton managed, a ghost of a smile on his face. He looked at Beverly. "You did it. Actually sealed him." "We did it," Beverly corrected, glancing at Maria. "All of us." But even as she said it, Beverly felt the warning pulse from her entity. Wayne was contained. Yes, but Robert Case and the Northern Ridge enforcers were still sealed in stone elsewhere in the cave. And more importantly, Wayne had allies Pax who'd agreed to his expansion plans, who'd benefit from his rise to power. When they discovered what had happened here, they'd come looking for answers, and for revenge. Beverly looked at the refugees, at Clayton with his broken wrist, at Maria still learning to control her newfound power. They'd won this battle, but the war Wayne had started was far from over. The cave trembled slightly, almost like a sigh of relief, or perhaps a warning. In the depths, something else stirred, something that had been waiting even longer than Wayne. The third entity, still unfound, still seeking its host. Beverly and Maria chose each other when the world chose violence. If you believe in second chances and redemption arcs, please hit the like button of this video. Be the person who witnesses their fight, not someone who scrolls past it. Chapter 9, The Vessel's Choice. Beverly woke to sunlight filtering through the cave entrance. Someone had moved her while she slept, positioned her away from the stone pillar that entombed Wayne. Her chest ached where the medallion shard had embedded itself, but when she touched the spot, she found only smooth skin marked with a silver scar in the shape of 3 overlapping moons. Clayton sat nearby, his wrist bound in makeshift splints. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his storm-gray eyes, but he smiled when he saw her wake. "How long?" Beverly asked. 2 days. He offered her water. "Your entity needed time to settle, I guess. You'd mumble in your sleep sometimes. Conversations in languages I didn't recognize." Beverly drank gratefully, feeling the entity stir in her mind. It was quieter now, less aggressive, more like a second consciousness living alongside her own than an invading force. "You named me," it said, almost shy. Beverly blinked. "What?" "In your sleep. You called me Ash. Said I needed a name if we were going to share a body." A pause. "I like it. Ash," Beverly whispered aloud. Clayton raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Maria appeared in the entrance, carrying supplies. She moved differently now, more confident, but also more careful. The third medallion shard hung around her neck, dormant, but present. "You're awake." Maria set down her bundle. "Jenny's been checking on you every few hours. She says the entity bonding process should have killed you, but..." She shrugged. "I guess bloodline descendants are tougher than we look." "Where are the others?" Beverly asked. "The refugees headed to neutral territory yesterday. Carrie's pack agreed to grant them asylum." Maria sat down, keeping distance between them. Emma wanted to stay, but Clayton convinced her she'd be safer away from here. Beverly felt a pang at that. The little girl had been through so much. Did they tell anyone about Wayne? "Not yet." Clayton's voice was grim. "But they will. Jenny wants to publicly clear your name. Tell everyone you were framed. Once that gets out, Wayne's allies will know something went wrong." "How long do we have?" "Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky." Clayton looked at the sealed pillar. "Robert Case's pack will come looking for him eventually, and when they find him like this, they'll want revenge," Maria finished. She met Beverly's eyes. "Which is why I need to tell you something. About the third entity." Beverly sat up straighter, ignoring her body's protests. "You found where it went?" "Not exactly." Maria touched the medallion shard at her throat. "But my entity, I've been calling her Ember, she told me something. About what Wayne was really planning." The name choice wasn't lost on Beverly. Fire and ash. Destruction and aftermath. "Tell me." "Wayne didn't just want to collect the entities. He wanted to merge them." Maria's voice dropped. "All three, unified in a single host. Not the fractured bonds we have, but complete fusion. He believed it would make him immortal. Unstoppable." "That's insane," Clayton said flatly. "One entity nearly drove Beverly's mother mad. Three would destroy the host completely," Beverly finished. "Unless the host was strong enough to contain them." She looked at Maria. "Where's the third entity now?" "That's the problem." Maria's expression was troubled. When the medallion shattered and the third piece fell, it didn't stay dormant. It actively sought a host. Someone compatible. Ash stirred uneasily in Beverly's mind. "Sister is awake. I can feel her. She's different from us." "Different how?" Beverly asked aloud. "Older. Angrier. She was bound first. Sealed deepest." A pause. "She doesn't want cooperation. She wants conquest." A sound echoed from the cave's depths, footsteps approaching slowly, deliberately. Clayton stood, reaching for his blessed blade with his good hand. Maria's power flared around her fingers, but Beverly felt it through her bond with Ash. This wasn't an enemy. Not exactly. Robert Case emerged from the darkness, but he wasn't sealed in stone anymore, and his eyes glowed with the unmistakable light of entity possession. "Hello, Beverly," he said, his voice layered with ancient power. "I believe we have much to discuss." Clayton went rigid. "Robert, what did you—" "Your alpha found me," the third entity spoke through Robert's mouth. "Sealed in stone, helpless, forgotten. He offered me freedom if I would bond with him rather than continue Wayne's imprisonment." "That's impossible," Maria breathed. "You're not bloodline. The entities can only bond with direct descendants of the three queens, yes." Robert smiled. "Wrong and terrible. Normally. But Robert Case has a secret." His hand reached up, pulling back his shirt collar to reveal a mark, 3 overlapping moons, branded into his skin. His grandmother was from the third line, exiled for refusing to participate in the entity binding. She changed her name, hid her heritage, built a new pack far from the ancient territories. Beverly's mind raced. "So you have latent bloodline power." "Had." Past tense. Robert's expression shifted, the entity's control tightening. "Now I have active power. And unlike you two fractured children, I accepted my entity's terms completely. Full merger. Complete fusion." Clayton's blessed blade trembled in his hand. "Robert, fight it. You don't have to." "Fight?" The entity laughed through Robert's mouth. "Your alpha isn't fighting, boy. He welcomed me. begged for this power. The voice dropped to something cold and cruel. He was tired of being second tier, tired of following Wayne's orders, bowing to stronger packs. I offered him everything he wanted. At what cost? Beverly demanded. His humanity? Eventually. The entity shrugged Robert's shoulders, but he knew that, accepted it. Some people would rather be powerful monsters than weak men. Ash's presence surged in Beverly's mind. We have to stop her. If she completes the transformation, Robert will be gone completely. How long? Beverly asked. The entity cocked Robert's head. Until the merger is permanent? 3 days. Maybe 4. Robert's will is stronger than expected. He's fighting more than he admitted he would. A smile. But he'll lose. They always do. Maria's power crackled. Why tell us this? Why not just attack? Because I'm curious. The entity stepped closer, studying them. You two bonded through sacrifice and cooperation, created something new, entities and hosts as partners, rather than master and slave. Robert's eyes gleamed. I want to see if it's reproducible. If that kind of bond is actually stronger than traditional merger. This is a test, Clayton said flatly. Everything is a test. The entity smiled. But this one has stakes. If you can save Robert, pull him back from the merger before it completes, I'll honor his wishes and release him. Let him live out his mortal life, entity-free. And if we fail, then I keep him. Use his body to do what Wayne couldn't gather the other entities. Merge them completely. Become what the ancient queens feared most. The entity's voice went soft, almost wistful. Become whole again. Beverly felt Ash's reaction to those words, longing mixed with terror. The entities wanted reunion, wanted to be complete. But they also remembered what that wholeness had cost the world last time. You're lonely, Beverly said quietly. All of you. Separated for 500 years, each sealed in your own prison, each going slowly mad from isolation. The entity stilled. For a moment, Robert's true consciousness surfaced, confused, frightened, fighting for control. Then the entity reasserted dominance, and he was gone again. 3 days, the entity repeated. Save him if you can. Or join me when the merger completes and we can discuss reunification terms. It turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Beverly? Wayne's allies are arriving tomorrow. 20 packs, all expecting to meet their new leader. When they find him sealed in stone, Robert's smile was sharp. Well, I'm sure you'll make them understand. The entity vanished back into the cave's depths, taking Robert with it. Silence fell like a hammer. We can't save Robert and fight 20 packs, Maria said finally. We're not strong enough. We could be. Clayton's voice was quiet. If you merged your entities, combined your power like Wayne wanted. No, Beverly's response was immediate. That's exactly what the third entity wants to see if we'll sacrifice our humanity for power, to prove that everyone eventually chooses the same path. Then what do we do? Beverly looked at the stone pillar holding Wayne, at the cave entrance showing the forest beyond, at Maria, whose entity flickered with nervous energy, at Clayton, whose loyalty had cost him everything, at the choice that would define everything that came next. We prove there's another way, Beverly said. We save Robert without losing ourselves. We face Wayne's allies without becoming monsters. And we show the entities that cooperation is stronger than conquest. How? Maria asked desperately. Beverly touched the silver scar on her chest, feeling Ash's presence there, felt the bond between them imperfect, unstable, but real, built on trust rather than domination. We give the entities what they really want, Beverly said, not merger, not power, not conquest. She looked at Clayton, at Maria. Connection, purpose, a reason to exist beyond hunger and rage. You want to reform them, Clayton said. Make them, what, good? Not good, just less broken. Beverly's voice was steady. The entities aren't evil, they're wounded. imprisoned for 500 years, isolated, driven mad. What if instead of fighting them, we heal them? Ash's presence swelled with something that felt almost like hope. You would do that? For us? For all of us, Beverly answered. Entity and human together. Maria nodded slowly. Ember's listening. She wants to know if it's possible. Only one way to find out. Beverly stood, legs still shaky but determined. We have 3 days to save Robert. 1 day before Wayne's allies arrive, and a lifetime of prejudice and fear to overcome. Clayton offered his good hand. Then we'd better get started. Beverly took it, feeling the warmth of human touch alongside Ash's cool presence in her mind. 2 consciousnesses in one body, not fighting, not merged, just together. Clayton, she said quietly, when this is over, if we survive, what happens to us? His storm gray eyes met hers. Honestly, I don't know. We're both traitors to our packs, both bonded to ancient powers, both walking targets for anyone who fears what we represent. So? His hand squeezed hers. So, we face it together. Build something new. Prove that different doesn't have to mean dangerous. Maria cleared her throat. And I help, because I owe you both that much and more. Beverly looked at them, an enforcer who'd chosen conscience over duty, a beta who'd learned the cost of borrowed power, and herself, an omega who'd inherited a legacy she never wanted but would wield anyway. 3 bloodline descendants, 3 fractured entities, 3 days to change everything. Let's save Robert, Beverly said. And then we change the world. Outside, thunder rumbled despite clear skies. The entities were listening, waiting, wondering if these humans would succeed where their ancestors had failed. Beverly felt Ash's presence, steady and certain. We'll try, the entity promised, together. And for the first time since entering Death's Hollow, Beverly believed they might actually survive this. The real question was what they'd become in the process. Chapter 10. What Awakened Inside. The packs arrived at dawn. Beverly stood at Death's Hollow's entrance, flanked by Clayton and Maria. Behind them, the cave pulsed with ancient power, 3 bloodline descendants, 3 entities, and 1 sealed traitor, creating a nexus of magic that made the air itself shimmer. 20 alphas approached, their packs spread through the forest like an army. At their head was Santiago Carroll, Wayne's closest ally and the most powerful alpha in the Eastern Territories. His expression was cold, calculating, dangerous. Where is Wayne Norris? Santiago demanded without preamble. Beverly met his gaze steadily. Sealed in stone, for crimes against the bloodline packs and attempted entity theft. Murmurs rippled through the gathered packs. Santiago's eyes narrowed. On whose authority? Mine. Beverly let power flicker around, her fingers shadow and light dancing together. Beverly Hull, last daughter of the first bloodline. The cave and its entity answer to me now. You're a banished omega. Santiago's voice dripped contempt. You have no authority over anything. She has the authority of 500 years of stolen legacy. Maria stepped forward, her own power manifesting. And she's not alone. I'm Maria Garner, second bloodline. Together, we hold 2 of the 3 ancient entities. Santiago studied them both, then looked at Clayton. And you, the traitor enforcer who abandoned his pack? I'm the one with the blessed blade who knows exactly where to strike to kill an alpha, Clayton said mildly. My authority is pretty straightforward. A few nervous laughs from the gathered wolves. Santiago didn't smile. Wayne promised us territory expansion, resources, power. The alpha's voice was hard. We came here to claim what we were owed. Wayne promised you lies built on stolen magic, Beverly countered. He orchestrated my banishment to activate the cave. Manipulated Maria into framing me. Tried to collect the entities like weapons. She gestured toward the cave. He's in there, if you want to ask him yourself, though the stone makes conversation difficult. You expect us to just accept your word? Another alpha called out. To abandon our agreements and follow a banished omega? No, Beverly said simply. I expect you to see the truth and make your own choices. She raised her hand, and the cave responded. Ancient symbols blazed to life across the stone face, creating a tapestry of light that told a story, the true history of the bloodline pacts, the entity bindings, Wayne's betrayal, and the price of stolen power. The alphas watched, transfixed. Beverly felt Ash feeding her the energy to maintain the display, felt the entity's desire to finally have the truth known. When the light faded, Santiago's expression had shifted from contempt to wary respect. The entities were never meant to be weapons, he said slowly. They were meant to be partners? Companions, Beverly corrected. The first queens didn't imprison them out of cruelty. They did it because the entities were dying, fading from existence, because they had no anchor to this world. The binding spell was meant to preserve them until they could learn to coexist with humans without consuming them. But something went wrong, Maria added. The queen's enemies attacked during the binding ritual, separated the entities prematurely, sealed them in rage and pain instead of peace. That's why they became so destructive. Beverly felt movement in the cave behind her. Robert Case emerged, the third entity still in control but listening with obvious interest. She speaks truth, the entity said through Robert's mouth. I remember now, the binding wasn't punishment. It was salvation. Robert's eyes glistened, the entity experiencing emotion for the first time in centuries. We were grateful. Then the attack came, and gratitude became rage, became madness, became this. Santiago looked between them. What are you proposing? A new pact, Beverly said. The entities need hosts to survive, but they don't need to consume them. We've proven cooperation is possible. What if we taught that to others? You want to spread entity bonding? An alpha said, horrified. Create more like you? No, Clayton interjected. They want to give the entities what they've been denied for 500 years. Choice, connection, a reason to exist beyond survival. The third entity released Robert suddenly. The alpha collapsed, gasping, fully himself for the first time in days. She's right, Robert choked out. The entity doesn't want to consume me. She's just so lonely, she doesn't know how else to connect. Tears ran down his face. 500 years alone in the dark. Can you imagine? 500 years with only rage to keep you company? Beverly felt Ash's emotion bleeding through their bond. The entity was crying too, in its way. Mourning centuries of isolation and madness and fear. The third entity Beverly started. Call me Echo, Robert said, though the voice was layered entity and human speaking together. If we're to be partners, I should have a name. Santiago watched this all with sharp intelligence. You're asking us to trust that these entities won't turn on us, that they can be controlled. Not controlled, Beverly corrected. Cooperated with. There's a difference. Prove it, Santiago challenged. Show us that your new way actually works. Beverly looked at Maria, then at Robert. Through their bonds, she felt Ash, Ember, and Echo. 3 entities, 3 hosts, 3 chances to demonstrate something the world hadn't seen in half a millennium. Partnership, instead of possession. Everyone back, Beverly ordered. The alphas retreated warily. Beverly, Maria, and Robert stood in a triangle, hands clasped. Through their touch, the entity bonds merged not into a single overwhelming force, but into a network. 3 separate consciousnesses supporting each other. The cave responded. Ancient magic flowed through them, and for a moment, Beverly saw what the first queens had intended. Not human or entity, but both. Not domination or submission, but cooperation. The entities lending their power, the humans lending their purpose. Together creating something neither could achieve alone. Light and shadow erupted from their joined hands, creating a column that shot into the sky. Every wolf present felt it the raw potential of what balanced entity bonding could achieve. Then Beverly released it, let the power fade, and the three of them stood normal again, tired but triumphant. Santiago knelt. "I believe you." One by one, the other alphas followed suit. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Beverly had proven her point. "Wayne's agreements are void," Santiago declared. "The packs will return to their territories." But Beverly Hull, his eyes met hers, "will be watching. If this new way of yours works, if you can truly teach cooperation between entity and host, that changes everything. And if it fails?" Maria asked quietly. "Then we'll do what must be done," Santiago said grimly. "But I hope it doesn't come to that." The packs withdrew. Within an hour, the forest was empty except for Beverly, Clayton, Maria, and Robert. "What now?" Robert asked. The entity echo had receded, but not vanished. Robert wore a silver scar, identical to Beverly's. The bond was permanent, but balanced. "Now we build something new," Beverly said. "A sanctuary. A place where those bonded with entities can learn control, where the entities can heal from their isolation." She looked at the cave. Death's hollow becomes life's hollow, a symbol of what we're trying to achieve. "That's going to take time," Clayton said. "Resources. Help. We have time." Maria smiled tiredly. "And we have each other." Robert nodded. "Northern Ridge will support this. I'll make sure of it." Over the following months, they built their sanctuary. Refugees came omegas, fleeing abusive packs, betas seeking purpose, even a few alphas curious about the new way. Beverly taught them what she'd learned about entity cooperation. Maria shared her techniques for balancing power and humanity. Robert provided resources and protection. Clayton became their defender, training those who wanted to learn combat without cruelty. His blessed blade techniques spread, creating warriors who could face entity threats without becoming monsters themselves. And slowly, impossibly, it worked. The entities Ash, Ember, and Echo learned to communicate with their hosts clearly, to share power without demanding consumption, to find purpose in partnership rather than parasitism. 1 year later, Beverly stood in the same spot where she'd first entered the cave. But everything was different now. The entrance was decorated with symbols of hope instead of warning. People moved through the chambers, learning, training, healing. Clayton appeared beside her, slipping his hand into hers. His wrist had healed, leaving only a faint scar. "Thinking about that first night? How terrified I was, how certain I'd die." Beverly leaned against him. "How wrong I was about almost everything." "Not everything." He kissed her temple. "You were right about one thing, that you deserved better than what they gave you." Beverly touched her chest, feeling Ash's presence there. The entity was calm now, content, no longer raging against imprisonment but embracing connection. "Thank you," Ash whispered, "for giving me a second chance. Thank you for giving me power when I needed it most." Beverly answered silently. Maria approached, carrying a small bundle. "Beverly, Clayton, there's someone I want you to meet." She pulled back the blanket to reveal a baby girl with wispy dark hair and bright, curious eyes. But those eyes held something else, a faint silver glow that marked entity heritage. "Her mother died in childbirth," Maria said softly. "The father brought her here, begging us to help. She's bonded to a fragment something new, born from Ember's energy but separate." Beverly looked at the child, seeing herself 18 years ago. Another Omega, another orphan, another person marked as different from birth. But this child wouldn't grow up alone, wouldn't be hidden and overlooked, would be taught to understand and control her power from the start. "What's her name?" Clayton asked. "Celine," Maria said. "The father named her after the moon goddess. He hopes she'll be a light in darkness." Beverly took the child carefully. Celine looked up at her with those silver eyes and gurgled happily. Through her bond with Ash, Beverly felt the fragment entity in the baby young, innocent, curious, not corrupted or raging, just new. She'll be raised here, Beverly decided, taught properly, given the childhood I never had. We'll all raise her, Maria said. Show her what balanced bonding looks like. Robert appeared in the entrance. Santiago's here. He's brought 3 more bonded individuals, ones who need training before their entities overwhelm them. Beverly handed Celine back to Maria. Send them to the training chambers. I'll be there shortly. As Robert left, Beverly looked at Clayton. Did you ever imagine this? Any of this? No, he admitted. I imagined following orders until I died, being the weapon someone else wielded. His arms wrapped around her. You gave me something better. Purpose I chose. A cause worth fighting for. We gave each other that, Beverly corrected. They stood together, watching people move through what had once been a cursed cave. Watching Omegas train alongside Alphas. Watching entities and humans cooperate instead of fight. It wasn't perfect. Some bonds failed. Some entities couldn't overcome their isolation-driven madness. Some humans couldn't resist the temptation of corrupted power, but enough succeeded to prove it was possible. And that was everything. That night, Beverly dreamed of her mother. The white-haired queen stood in a chamber of light, no longer twisted by entity consumption but whole and at peace. You did it, her mother said. What I couldn't, you saved them. I'm trying, Beverly answered. Every day, I'm trying. That's all anyone can do, her mother smiled. I'm proud of you, daughter, for choosing the harder path, for proving that different doesn't have to mean dangerous. When Beverly woke, Clayton was beside her, peaceful in sleep. Through the window, she could see Death's hollow life's hollow now glowing with soft light as entity-bonded individuals practiced their control. She touched the silver scar on her chest, felt Ash's presence, calm and content. We changed the world, the entity said quietly. We survived it, Beverly corrected. And that's enough. But even as she said it, she felt something else. Deep in the cave's foundation, where the binding spells were strongest, a 4th presence stirred. Something older than the 3 entities. Something that had been waiting and watching and learning. The original entity. The source from which Ash, Ember, and Echo had been split. It was waking. Beverly's hand found Clayton's in the darkness. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Proved they could survive the impossible, could transform curses into gifts, prisons into sanctuaries, enemies into allies. The banished Omega who inherited a cursed cave had become something no one expected. Not a victim, not a monster, not a weapon or a queen or a tool for someone else's ambition. Just Beverly, entity bonded, bloodline descendant, partner to an ancient power, and architect of a new way forward. And what had awakened inside Death's Hollow wasn't just entities or power or ancient magic. It was hope. Epilogue. 5 years later, a young woman with silver eyes stood at the entrance to Life's Hollow. Celine, now 6 years old, held Beverly's hand as they watched new arrivals, 5 more entity-bonded individuals seeking training, seeking control, seeking hope. Mama Bev, Celine asked, using the title Beverly had earned through love rather than blood, will there always be more who need help? Beverly looked at Clayton, who stood ready to greet the newcomers, at Maria, who'd become the sanctuary's head teacher, at Robert, whose Northern Ridge Pack now served as Life's Hollow's primary protector, at the cave that had been meant to kill her but instead had given her everything. Yes, Beverly answered honestly, there will always be more, but that's okay, because there will also always be people willing to help them. Celine's fragment entity pulsed with contentment, perfectly balanced with the child's consciousness, a new generation, raised without the rage and isolation that had corrupted the originals. Then I'll help too, Celine declared. When I'm big enough. Beverly smiled, squeezing the child's hand. I know you will. Together, they walked forward to greet the future.